The story begins with a boy named Rudiger Chelsea narrating his life. He explains that after the death of his father, his mother had asked him to become a shaman, insisting that he had the qualities of one. Rudiger resisted as he knew what he wanted in life, but he eventually gave in to his mother's wishes and began training to become a shaman. 10 years passed and Rudiger finally became a member of the Shaman Society. However, he soon realized that he had made a mistake. He didn't enjoy being a shaman, and he felt like he was living a lie. One day, he had an accident and died. Rudiger thought that was the end of his story, but he was wrong. He was reborn into a new life, and in this life he was a teacher at a magic academy. Rudiger was shocked to learn that he had been reborn, but he was also relieved to be free from the life of a shaman. The present scene starts with the setting of a railway station where a young man sits in a carriage opposite an older stranger reading a newspaper. The man reads a newspaper which mentions that the civil war of the Yuta kingdom is finally over. Excited, he says it out loud and then introduces himself as Rudiger Chelsea. The old stranger also introduces himself as Gerard. The two have a conversation over the places they're headed to, and Rudiger later tells Gerard that he is a new member of the Exilian Empire's Theron Academy. A huge blast rocks the train, interrupting their conversation. They suspect robbers but are surprised when Rudiger casts a spell on an attacker. The attacker reveals a bomb, which detonates, leaving Rudiger and the attacker vanished. Gerard's mask is torn, revealing his true face, and he wonders why such incidents happen when he is present. Rudiger, a man who is no stranger to assuming different identities to escape his past. He reflects on his choice of the name Machiavelli, explaining that he drew it from a memory of one of his previous lives. Having been entangled in numerous affairs during his travels, Rudiger was forced to constantly change his identity. One day, when he found himself among unwanted attention, a sudden and dangerous explosion occurred. He boarded the arcane punk train, hoping to evade his pursuers, but the train brought him right back to the site of the explosion. As Rudiger examines the aftermath, he becomes suspicious of the circumstances. This wasn't a mere robbery. The attackers seemed to be on a suicide mission, showing no interest in robbing goods. His instincts tell him that this was an inside job. Just then, a man approaches Rudiger, claiming the attackers were armed burglars targeting the No. 1 train and advises him to stay behind. He quickly grapples with the man. As the situation intensifies, more attackers arrive, but Rudiger unveils his true power as a mage, using his abilities to render their guns useless. He leaps off the train and lands on its rooftop. The burglars are stunned by his magical power, but their leader orders some of them to continue their pursuit. Rudiger makes a plan to distract the remaining burglars at the back of the train. With a combination of cunning and magical skill, he manages to separate the train cars and skillfully bypass the attackers. However, the other mage among the burglars proves to be a formidable adversary, surviving Rudiger's onslaught. But before the mage can retaliate, a mysterious figure, known only as Cold Steel Knighthood, appears out of nowhere. With deadly precision, she puts an end to the other mage, swiftly splitting him in half. As the danger subsides, Rudiger finds himself face to face with Cold Steel Knighthood, who seems to possess her own extraordinary set of skills and secrets. Rudiger finds that reinforcements are on their way to secure the passengers and clear out the compartments. The Lethevelk station is where he finds out that Vice Captain Veronica DeVille was the one who took down the burglars in front of him. As Rudiger chats with Veronica, Officer Remlis from the Lethevelk Metropolitan Police Department interrupts them. They discuss the attack and suspect a skilled wizard was involved, but the speed indicates inside help. Rudiger decides to assume the identity of Rudiger Chelsea, a man who legally purchased a train ticket, to investigate the passenger list for the culprit. When Officer Remlis checks Rudiger's ticket, finds this suspicious, but Veronica vouches for Rudiger, explaining that he bravely fought off the terrorists. From then on, Rudiger becomes Mr. Rudiger, a young man working at Soren Academy. He decides to keep this disguise for now and heads to the academy. As he travels with Wilford, he contemplates how to escape this new identity and wonders about Wilford's background, suspecting he might be a former knight. Upon reaching the impressive academy, Wilford advises Rudiger to meet Principal Elisa Willow, who is expecting him. Rudiger follows the grand halls, amazed by the academy's size and architecture. After arriving at Soren Academy, Rudiger meets with Principal Elisa Willow. He reassures her that the situation during the train attack was handled well thanks to the help of the knights. However, he worries that Elisa might have met the real Rudiger before and could discover his true identity. To his relief, Elisa confirms that this is their first meeting and compliments him on his good looks. Elisa hands Rudiger the employment contract, offering him the position of a professor with a monthly salary of 30 imperial gold coins. He realizes he has practical experience and could make a decent professor. In his chambers, Rudiger has 3 weeks to prepare before classes start. He reflects on his tough upbringing and how he had to survive on his own for 27 years. He considers Ludger the perfect fake identity. As 2 weeks pass, Rudiger begins to prepare for the orientation. During his time at a restaurant, a woman approaches him, looking for Rudiger Chelsea. He understands she's not here by mistake and decides to play along, pretending to be Ludger. The woman informs Rudiger that they've eliminated key figures at the academy and dealt with traitors. Rudiger takes advantage of her fear to gather more information about the organization she represents. He keeps his true intentions hidden from her, refusing to meet her at a specified location and asserting his authority. Rudiger analyzes the situation and realizes that Ludger's identity was carefully constructed. His mission is to infiltrate the academy and win its favor without revealing his true identity. However, he knows that the other First Order member in the academy might know the real Ludger and could eventually discover his impersonation. New Professor Rudiger Chelsea takes over the theory of spellcasting class. Students gossip about the previous professor's embarrassment by Flora. Ludger's military background sparks curiosity, and some expect easy grades due to his past. When Rudiger enters the class and introduces himself as Rudiger Chelsea, he surprises the students by announcing that the class will be challenging, not an easy route to good grades. He strategically mixes sophomores with freshers, hoping some students might drop out due to the difficulty of his class. During the entry ceremony, the students are too intimidated to ask questions, and Rudiger realizes he should have been friendlier to encourage interaction. As he leaves the class, he meets another new professor, Selena, who introduces herself. In the corridor, the students are still intimidated by Rudiger's demeanor, but the encounter with Selena offers a brief respite, leaving him to contemplate his approach as a professor at Soren Academy. Rudiger attends a meeting for new professors to get to know each other. He learns about Professor Brino, Professor Benamor. Benamor judges his colleagues based on their social status, which Rudiger finds disappointing. However, he is glad that he won't be alone at lunch. The mysterious woman from the restaurant, a member of the First Order, ensures that Rudiger's first real class isn't empty. She pulls some strings, and now 80 students are attending, even freshers. Rudiger is surprised, as he expected far fewer students. Now, he'll have to adjust his teaching approach to accommodate everyone. During the class, a curious student disrupts and asks Rudiger about the 4 specializations in spellcasting. Flora, another student, thinks it's ambitious for Rudiger to teach all 4 specializations at once. Teaching even 2 would be a challenge, she believes. To captivate the class, Rudiger demonstrates a powerful 3rd-tier flame elemental spell called Fluttering Flame. He explains that it involves 7 components working together. Rudiger declares that he'll teach them to cast the spell 3 times faster. Some students ask questions, and he also introduces a way to maintain the technique while shortening the casting time. Flora objects, believing it to be impossible. The class is intrigued by the challenging prospect of mastering the advanced spell. As Flora challenges Ludger's claims, he becomes determined to prove his point to the class. He explains that magic has become stagnant due to sticking to old customs and history, unlike science, which has steadily advanced and might even surpass magic. Rudiger emphasizes that there's room for improvement in magic, and he aims to demonstrate it. To illustrate his point, Rudiger asks Flora about the casting times of the fluttering spells. Rudiger invites Flora to demonstrate her ability. She manages to cast the spell in 4.78 seconds. However, Ludger remarks that he can do it much faster. He demonstrates his technique and completes the spell in a mind-blowing 0.24 seconds, leaving everyone astounded. He reveals that he used a unique blueprint technique, using a spell to cast another spell through a program he calls the source code technique. Flora is left in awe as she has never heard of such a method before. One student, Cheryl, is relieved that her friend didn't receive a bad record in the class. The class comes to an end, and Rudiger instructs everyone to review the lecture. He promises to share his source code with those who follow along nicely. One particularly happy student plans to attend Rudiger's class regularly, but he gets rudely interrupted by a noble student. The interruption creates a tense atmosphere in the class, but Rudiger handles the situation calmly, trying to maintain order. As the excited student, Aiden, is happy to be in Ludger's class, he gets rudely interrupted by a noble student named Javan. Jevan demands attention, but another student named Leo arrives and puts Jevan in his place, revealing that Jevan's family lives at the farthest frontiers of the Empire, so he shouldn't act so superior. Jevan mocks Leo and the Academy, but Leo cleverly reminds him that using magic against another student is against the rules, which might get Jevan reported. Fuming with anger, Jevan storms off. Aiden and Leo introduce themselves, and Aiden thanks Leo for standing up to Javan. Leo is straightforward and dismisses Aiden's admiration, leaving for his class. Aiden wants to follow Leo to his class. Leo advises Aiden to stop using boony signals. Leo introduces some influential second-year students, warning Aiden to avoid unnecessary interactions with them, especially Jivan, who is part of Fruden Wohlberg's faction, one of the powerful noble families. Rudiger mentions his attempt to combine science and magic with the source code, but the students' reactions were unexpected. He realizes he needs to improve his magic skills further and not solely rely on the source code. The principal visits him and informs him about specific first-year students he should focus on, including the royal princess, Elendil von Exilian, who is attending his class. Rudiger is surprised to hear about the princess being in his class. The principal leaves, and Wilford greets her upon her departure. Rudiger contemplates whether he can trust Wilford, who seems to have some hidden motives. Wilford and the principal discuss the suspicious infiltrators at Soren Academy, and she is impressed by Rudiger's ability to resist Elisa's evil eye with his strong will. They suspect a group behind the train terror attack might be involved in Ludger's identity change. The principal trusts Wilford's judgment and decides to closely monitor Rudiger. Rudiger examines the student sheet, concerned about Flora's influential family background. He suspects Aiden's uncommon magic and ponders his choices between Soren Academy and the secret society. Cautious to avoid detection, he wonders about the real Ludger's identity. As he receives a patrol warrant, Rudiger prepares to uphold Soren's rules and keep the campus safe. Lady Dynama, a noble, argues with a commoner girl over practice space. Rudiger intervenes, believing in treating all students equally, and punishes Dynama for her unfair actions. Her belittling remark about Rudiger being a fallen aristocrat infuriates him, but he is determined to prove himself and show his abilities and dedication as equal to any noble student at the academy. Furious with Lady Dynama's belittling remark, Rudiger is calmed down by Professor Selena. He asserts his rights as a professor and demands respect in his position. While excusing her behavior as that of a new student, he decides to punish Dynama for casting a spell on her classmate, Renee. Renee is grateful that Rudiger recognized her, despite the large class size, and feels inspired to work harder, knowing that everyone at Soren is treated equally. Feeling uneasy, Rudiger takes his medicine and reflects on his condition. He knows he can last 5 more days with the remaining medicine and will have to rely on magic afterward. Using the Academy's pharmacy would leave a record, so he plans to contact the person who sold him the medicine before. Selena and Melinda discuss a rooftop incident in Leatherbelf involving a dark figure. Rudiger dismisses it, but a witness at Thern confirms it. They chat about ghost stories, teasing Selena's interest. The conversation turns to Rudiger's impressive class demo with the source code, making other professors, including Chris Benamore, jealous. Later, it's revealed that Rudiger knows who the werewolf is, and they met the previous night. Rudiger's real name is Hyung Nim, and he seems to have a secretive past that connects him to the werewolf Hans. Rudiger and Hans discuss Hans's condition, which turns him into a half-human, half-beast when bitten by a beast. Rudiger has a medicine to cure him. They first met during a task to hunt cryptids. Rudiger now goes by the identity of Rudiger Chelsea, which Hans questions. Hans praises Rudiger's quick thinking and mentions the emerging secret society called the Black Dawn Society. Rudiger asks for the suitcase and regrets not meeting 2 days earlier when Hans was in town. Rudiger and Hans confirm the werewolf's existence and decide to search for it. Rudiger recalls using a revolver in the past under the name Abraham Van Helsing to deal with cryptids. Using an ultrasonic sound that only the werewolf can hear, Rudiger manages to catch it. However, some police officers approach, and the werewolf escapes. Rudiger promises to capture it again. Police officers arrive and are instructed to arrest anyone suspicious. Rudiger and the werewolf fight fiercely in a different location. Despite the werewolf's agility, Rudiger defeats it and presents its head to Hans. Hans and Rudiger decide to stay in the city as there are plenty of distractions, making it an inconspicuous place for them to settle. Rudiger suspects a bigger force behind the werewolf. The death toll keeps rising despite him killing it earlier. He's puzzled by the situation. A meeting is set up to discuss the recent attacks where 2 first-year students were injured. The Chancellor suspects a werewolf attack, but Professor Hugo Borutog interrupts, believing that a commoner student might be responsible since both victims are of noble lineage. Amidst all this, Rudiger and Hans are on high alert, knowing that they must keep their true identities hidden while staying in the city. They continue to investigate the mysterious incidents and remain cautious about potential threats lurking in the shadows, a strong front against the threats they face. However, his thoughts are interrupted when a mysterious note is thrown his way, warning him to get rid of all his experiments to protect Ludger's identity from being revealed. It becomes clear that the Black Dawn Society is responsible for the attack, and this incident was a slip-up on their part. Rudiger usually wouldn't mind if his experiments were caught, but he can't risk exposing his true identity. He decides to eliminate the experiments before Soren catches them and conducts interrogations. Elisa takes charge and sets up patrols, instructing the professors to warn the students not to wander around late at night, and she wouldn't mind if they penalize those who do. Rudiger meets Sedina, who tells him the werewolf incident was a cryptid experiment by black wizards from Shamsa's school. They decide to eliminate the remaining black wizards. Only 2 are left. During their conversation, Flora spots Rudiger and Sedina using the voice-blocking spell, leaving her suspicious of their interaction. The situation grows more complex, and Rudiger knows he must be careful to keep his secrets hidden from both the Black Dawn Society and the watchful eyes of his colleagues at Soren. Flora is curious about Rudiger and Sedina's conversation. Some students want to hunt the werewolf, but Aiden and Leo prefer leaving it to the professors. Tacy proposes a competition to catch the werewolf first. Aiden is unsure about accepting the challenge, but Leo takes it upon himself to play along, thinking Tacy won't take it seriously. However, to their surprise, Tacy heads towards the direction where the werewolves were spotted, showing her determination. Professor Hugo asks Rudiger to watch over noble students to restore his family name, but Rudiger believes in equality and doesn't want to upset the principal. While patrolling, he investigates the Thiern vicinity sewage treatment plant. He follows the footprints and saves Renee and Arendir von Exilian from a werewolf attack, giving them demerit points for their involvement. The mystery deepens, and Rudiger must protect the students and uncover the truth. After understanding Renee and Arendir's explanation, Rudiger excludes the demerits, realizing their intentions were for safety. On their way back, Rudiger is unexpectedly cornered by the same werewolf from earlier. Just as the werewolf lunges, he wakes up from what seemed like a trance. Rudiger follows the werewolf to uncover the truth. He instructs Renee and Arendir to return to their dorms and continues on his own. He hunts down the werewolf and is surprised to find it exhibits unusual properties. This discovery leaves him puzzled and raises more questions. Aiden and Leo search for Tacy and come across Rudiger with the injured baby werewolf. They can't leave it to suffer, so they decide to protect and care for it. Just as they begin to unravel the mystery behind the baby werewolf, the ominous presence of the other werewolf suddenly looms over them. The group finds themselves face to face with this menacing creature, leaving them in a perilous and uncertain situation. Now, they must confront the danger together and uncover the truth behind these mysterious werewolves while safeguarding their own lives. The werewolf charges at Aiden, but Leo steps in and gets thrown down. Tacy tries to stay calm as she wants to save her family. The werewolf notices her attempts and attacks, but Aiden protects her. Tacy wonders why he helped, and Aiden yells that he won't watch his friend get hurt. Aiden tells Tacy and Leo that the werewolf might be protecting its baby. He tries to talk to the werewolf, offering medicine for the pup. Just then, Professor Ludger attacks the werewolf, asking the students to back off. Aiden stands in between, asking the professor not to kill it as he believes the werewolf understands human words. Before Aiden can say more, the professor pushes him aside and attacks the werewolf with a fire spell. He orders Aiden to go back to the dormitory and says he'll be punished for his behavior the next day. Caught by Professor Ludger, the students await their punishment. The principal arrives with a happy expression, indicating their punishment won't be severe. She praises Aiden for his bravery in saving Tacy. In the end, they receive 10 penalty points for their dangerous actions, but are also awarded 20 award points for their bravery. As the students leave, Professor Ludger thanks the principal for being lenient because it wouldn't have looked good on the professor's reputation. The principal asks if there was anything strange about the werewolf, but the professor says there wasn't. The principal thanks him for protecting the students once again. Later, Professor Ludger is alone and reflects on what he saw. He realizes that the werewolf was actually a human who hadn't fully transformed. The humans are being captured and turned into werewolves, rather than wolves turning into werewolves. Professor Ludger tells himself that what he did yesterday was right because otherwise, the werewolf would have hurt the humans. He holds a magic crystal in his hands and calls Hans to make a request. Leo, Aiden, and Tacy are puzzled by recent events. Tacy notices Leo's broken arm and inquires about it. Aiden shares his observation of a strange leash on the pup's neck, which made him try to intervene during the attack. Leo adds that there's a rumor about people hiding in Sren, and they find it unusual to see a leash on a werewolf. Aiden wonders if Professor Ludger is connected to the strange rumor, but Tacy suggests not jumping to conclusions and reminds them of the professor's caring behavior. They agree and decide to have lunch together as friends do. Later, the scene shifts to Professor Ludger talking to Hans, investigating the missing people in Levolk and the areas where certain people gather, possibly an abandoned factory. Hans informs the professor that some workers have gone missing outside the city, including a family of 3. After hearing this, Professor Ludger decides to go there soon. At the factory, workers complain about their long shifts. They mention a kidnapped kid who caused a scene, even when the parents turned into werewolves. Blaming the kid for their suffering, they are shot in the head by Professor Ludger, who wears a mask. Ludger asks Hans about the number of opponents and their powers. Hans says there are at least 40 opponents, and Ludger can enter through the sewer. The next scene shows Ludger shooting all his opponents, while 2 strange people discuss a mole hiding among them and talk about killing the mole. Professor Ludger confronts the workers in the factory, using his powerful magic to defeat them. Amidst the battle, he notices a glimmering golden insect, a sign of the deadly insect brothers, and wonders if they have been waiting for him. Word spreads about Ludger's presence. In the darkness, one of the insect brothers is killed, revealing that Ludger is already among them. In a desperate attempt to defend himself, the surviving insect brother releases a swarm of insects from his sleeve. However, Ludger emerges from the darkness, and with a swift motion, he extinguishes the remaining insect brother using his flame magic. As the lifeless body falls to the ground, an eerie transformation begins to take place. A strange insect starts to emerge from the deceased insect brother's body, growing and transforming at an alarming rate. Within moments, a giant green-winged creature stands before Ludger, emanating an aura of anger and vengeance. The creature threatens Ludger, vowing to shred him to pieces and make him pay dearly for the death of his brother. Ludger stays composed, ready to face the giant insect. The fate of the factory and its people depend on his battle. As the giant insects attack Professor Ludger, he tries to fight back by shooting and using flame magic on them. However, the flame magic doesn't work well on the massive insects due to their large size. Ludger realizes that his usual powerful spells won't be effective on these creatures, and he doesn't have enough time to cast even stronger spells. Meanwhile, Hans waits for Ludger to return. He observes Ludger using his real magic or whatever special abilities he possesses. Ludger arrives after defeating the giant insect and securing the people. Hans worries about the dangerous experiments. Ludger reveals the culprit's identity as Hans returns to their hideout. The scene shifts to Belfort Rixen, who's angry and yelling at his servants for their poor performance. He reveals that he has been supplying money for the experiments in the hopes of developing a drug that could restore his youthful energy and reverse the effects of his aging body. Ludger appears in Rixen's room and silences him with a sound barrier. He confronts Rixen about the tragic incident involving a 7-year-old child and his parents. Rixen defends the experiments, believing them to be noble contributions to mankind. However, Ludger is not convinced by Rixen's justification. In a bold move, he injects the drug into Rixen's neck, possibly as a form of retribution or to make him understand the consequences of his actions. The situation takes a dramatic turn as Rixen faces the effects of the drug firsthand. Professor Ludger confronted Belfort Rixen, injecting him with a full dosage of the drug. Rixen transformed into a colossal and terrifying monster, beyond anyone's control. The mansion's servants rushed in to defend their master, but the situation turned chaotic. Meanwhile, as Ludger left the mansion, he made a secret stop to drop off a safe for Hans. He instructed Hans to use as much of its contents as needed and hide the rest. Ludger assured Hans that he would return soon, leaving his friend with a sense of both excitement and curiosity. The following morning, rumors spread like wildfire as reporters gathered around Rixen's mansion. They talked about the astonishing event that occurred the night before, where Rixen was supposedly devoured by a monstrous creature. However, the truth was that the wizards responsible for the mansion's security managed to burn the monster down. Lord Protector Commander Tarina Lionhowl, leader of the Nightcrawler Night Order, arrived at the scene. Inspector Teberan greeted her. Tarina took control of the investigation and requested all evidence and data, asking Teberan to leave the site. Tarina investigates the monster's remains and senses there's more to the incident. Rixon's rumored connections to black magic intrigue her. Her team finds a hidden safe behind a frame, but it's empty, adding to her curiosity. Tarina connected the dots, suspecting Arsene Lupin's involvement. Her team mentioned a recent incident in Leathervelk, an abandoned factory burning down. They set their sights on the factory, hoping to find crucial evidence and solve the mystery. 22. In Ludger's class, he teaches basic elements and elemental magic. Flora answers correctly about fire magic. Ludger explains magic's historical development for war, but emphasizes diverse uses based on intentions. He instructs them to practice forming elemental spheres and gives tips to improve spells. Ludger notices Aiden struggling with magic. He talks to Aiden, who feels embarrassed. Ludger offers to teach him fire magic, not wanting to leave any student behind. Aiden recalls a comforting memory from 8 years ago, where a fireplace's flame provided warmth during a harsh snowstorm. This memory helps him manifest fire magic successfully, and Ludger praises his progress. Ludger encourages the class to use their senses and personal experiences to strengthen their magic abilities. Flora, curious if Ludger will teach her something new, tries to impress him by demonstrating overlapping magic. However, her attempt goes awry, and the magic becomes uncontrollable. The other students get scared and run away, but Ludger steps in to help. He advises Flora to regain control over her magic power and stay focused. Flora reflects on her difficult childhood, facing envy and her father's cold stare. Determined to prove herself, she gains better control over her magic. During class, Ludger notices Flora's inexperience causing risks. He corrects her mistakes patiently, offering guidance. Ludger encourages Flora to recognize her self-worth and use magic purposefully. He wonders if he was too harsh due to his past experiences and regrets his approach. Professor Ludger notices Lynn's struggle in manifesting elemental properties. Concerned, he offers her a book on understanding non-property magic, which was obtained by someone with a lifetime of insights. Lynn asks about the person, and Ludger sadly reveals they have passed away. Flora and Lynn face challenges with their magical abilities. While Flora struggles to control her powers and confronts her past, Lynn receives valuable guidance from Ludger, opening her up to new possibilities in magic. These experiences contribute to their growth as individuals within the magical world they inhabit. Ludger explains to Lynn that mastering one element makes one an expert. He reassures her about non-property magic, saying the world and magic evolve. He advises her to read the book. Later, he reflects on Lynn's powerful judgment eyes, which she's unaware of. Aiden practices magic and confronts Jevon for mocking his friends. Ludger intervenes. Chris questions Ludger's authority, and they all consider participating in the combat. Professor Chris asks if Ludger wants to make a bet, which Ludger accepts. Professor Chris bets on Jevon as Ludger bets on Aiden. The offer of the bet is decided to be a piece of magic that each of the professors have researched on. Ludger suggests the duel to be held in 3 days. As Aiden starts to apologize, Ludger tells him to use the variables to his advantage and focus on winning the duel. Aiden asks Ludger for lessons in order to win using his own ability. Aiden recalls childhood advice about using magic responsibly. Ludger agrees to teach him, warning it may be tough. Aiden agrees, starts training, and wonders why Ludger is confident in his victory. Professor Chris calls Jevon and gives him a mana-boosting drug. He instructs Jevon to drink it before the duel. Professor Chris assures him that he won't be caught for using it, so he should use it in order to show the difference between an aristocrat and a commoner. The day of the duel arrives as the students wonder who is going to win. The principal arrives and asks Ludger who he bet on. The students start to cheer for both Jevon and Aiden. Aiden says that he will be using his staff in the battle, which is made in the shape of a sword. The duel begins, and both of them attack swiftly. As Aiden is pushed back by Jevon's strong magic, he starts to apply Ludger's lessons. Aiden uses a war mage technique, surprising Professor Chris. Jevon fails to counter and loses. Ashamed, Jevon attacks, but Aiden's anti-magic technique prevails. Aiden advises Jevon to accept defeat. Professor Ludger tells Professor Chris that he doesn't want his research because it is not his style and leaves. Professor Chris is humiliated. Sedina approaches Ludger in the hallway and congratulates him on his win, and asks if he is okay with getting Soren's attention. He instructs her to maintain her appearance as a model student. Rudiger thinks about making his own organization. Hans calls Rudiger through the magic crystal and asks what they should do to hold their position. Rudiger says it's time to use his power. The scene shifts to a pub where the Red Society people are talking about their wasted investment in Belfort. They are interrupted by Rudiger in disguise, who introduces himself as James Moriarty. The head of the Red Society identifies him as the consultant who controlled the Black Alley of the Kingdom of Delica. He suspects if it's the real James Moriarty, as the Red Society members start shooting him from behind. James uses magic and attacks back. Suddenly, a werewolf appears beside James. The scene shifts to the past, where Hans explains to Rudiger that the Red Society is the largest gang that controls the Black Alleyway. Rudiger decided to straightaway attack the head of the gang, as they have connection with Belfort. He asks Hans to dress up as a werewolf to scare them off. The leader gets scared and apologizes for not recognizing Moriarty. He tells the leader that he is here to start a new business, so the Red Society has to cease to exist after today, as he is not a fan of the dirty work they do. The leader yells at his men to attack James Moriarty as the lights are turned off and Rudiger gets ready to attack. Rudiger faces a group of attackers he suspects to be knights. He scares them with a fake bottle of poison. One attacker gets trapped and poisoned. Rudiger gains the upper hand as he uses the dagger as a trap to poison him. Rudiger kills one of the attackers. One of them wonders if he is Professor Moriarty, completely unaware of the professor's formidable combat skills. Rudiger warns that the person will die anyway, but can win with carefulness. The second knight rushes towards Rudiger, who quickly drops the bottle again. Focused on deflecting the bottle, the attacker doesn't anticipate the consequences. The forceful impact of the bottle shatters the attacker's sword. Rudiger aims a gun at the attacker, who panics and tries to escape. However, a hidden shadow strikes him from behind with a dagger. Rudiger concludes the encounter. Later that day, Rudiger sits in a bar, sharing with his friend that he has gotten all the information he needs and plans to hand the attacker over to the organization. His friend asks him about the people in the Red Society. The attacker mentions some important documents and a secret book on the 2N office floor. Hans feels there's no one better for the job and tells him that he's being suspected by the chairman. Hans asks Rudiger the name he wants to give to his organization. Hans suggests UNON, which sounds similar to unknown. They cheer with a drink for the creation of a new organization. Professor Selina curiously asks why Rudiger doesn't have any assistants. Rudiger takes a moment to reflect and explains that he hasn't felt the need for one, even though he manages 80 students in his lectures. Rudiger is surprised to learn about this and asks Professor Selina if she has any. In response, everyone suggests that Rudiger should consider having at least 5 assistants to help him. Later that day, Rudiger checks a diary and discovers that even new professors have at least 6 assistants. Some individuals also conduct magic research under their professors. Confused about whom to pick, he creates a list but later decides it's not urgent. Rudiger encounters Sayanita hiding in the alley. Gathering his courage, he asks her to become his assistant. Though shocked, she eventually agrees to bring the document within 2 days. Just an hour later, Sayanita surprises Rudiger by bringing the completed assistant registration document. Students are buzzing with a strange rumor about Rudiger looking for assistants. Suddenly, they discuss the Universal Stone, which is rumored to grant wishes and is hidden somewhere in Theron. Some students question its existence. Sayanita enters the class with class materials, surprising everyone as she reveals herself as an assistant. Feeling uneasy, Julia asks Rudiger how he picked his assistant, wondering if it's based on magical skill or fame. Rudiger answers that the most important requirement is character. The assistant announces the upcoming midterm to the class, and then Rudiger leaves. Rudiger hands the assistant a list of assignments and requests her to take care of them by the end of the day in front of the hall. Flora Lumos interrupts Rudiger, mentioning that she has heard about him choosing an assistant. She thanked him for his previous help and advice. He tends to leave but assures Flora that she can always apply for the assistant position. Rudiger visits the Chancellor's room, and she asks if he's heard about the recent rumors. The Chancellor reveals the existence of the Universal Stone, an ancient relic with unknown power, said to be 100 times stronger than any mage's abilities. Rudiger remains confused, unsure if such a thing truly exists in Theron. The Chancellor feels that someone revealed the top secret. They explore the possibility of the information leaking during the stone's transportation or maintenance. The Chancellor requests Rudiger to investigate this matter, but he doubts about her trustworthiness. To Rudiger's question, She reveals that other professors are also involved, but in various areas related to the stone. Confused about the information leak, Rudiger senses an imminent incident. He feels the relic could be the reason behind his numerous identities across the world, and he never expected to find one in Thierry. Now, he believes he can use the universal stone to locate the relic he has been searching for. Rudiger wants to combine all those missing pieces of relics to make it into a single relic. Princess Arendir gets tired with people continuously coming to her. She wants to live like a normal student. Someone urgently requests a meeting with the princess asking about the rumored existence of werewolves in Thierry. Princess clarifies that one of their professors handled the matter. Interested, Tarina seeks further details, but the princess hesitates to disclose it, as it is a secret task. Tarina makes a plan to meet the professors, but the princess asks if she knows who they are, indicating that she herself doesn't know the professor's identity. But shockingly, she reveals the name of Rudiger. Later, Tarina asks Enya about the information on the factory. Enya responds, stating that she analyzed the unburnt pieces of paper, but the details were impossible to decode. She adds that the Red Society recently vanished overnight in Leatherbelt. Tarina urges them to ignore it, since it's unrelated to their current case. However, she tells to investigate a bit more about Leatherbelt. Thinking about the werewolf rumors, Rudiger notices the students' boredom and decides to show them magic. The students were stunned by the unique form of magic. However, the professor clarifies that he won't be teaching it to them. If any student in the class figures out the magic, Rudiger asks them to come to his office for further merits. The Chancellor urgently calls Rudiger, saying the stone has been hijacked. She asks him to pursue the thief until midnight. Rudiger, feeling suspicious about the Chancellor, he calls Cyanida to tell him everything from the start. Based on the information, they find a document related to the stone, causing rumors to spread among the students. The Third Order sees the information and learns about the existence of the stone. They inform the Second Order. However, Demilus, being very close to the government, acts on his own. While discussing with his assistant, Rudiger feels he didn't tell the First Order because Demilus wants the First Order spot. Cyanida believes Demilus lacks talent, but desires to achieve something significant. The assistant mentions they went in the direction of the Silent Forest. Rudiger praises Cyanida for all the information and leaves to find the hijackers. Rudiger casts Aether Nocturnus, a powerful spell in the summon magic category known as Magic Path. It hides the caster completely, concealing their presence and making them undetectable and unrecognizable. The forest is dangerous, driving anyone who enters it to madness. As the hijackers realize they are surrounded and cannot hold out for long, Demilus devises a plan. He screams in pain, declaring that the Universal Stone is utterly useless. Out of nowhere, Rudiger arrives, striking fear into everyone present. Instantly, everyone kneels before him and offers the relic to the First Order. Rudiger uses his shadow magic to defeat everyone, but the relic turns out not to be the Universal Stone as claimed by the Chancellor. Suddenly, the Chancellor arrives with a powerful blast in the jungle, putting an end to the situation. Casting the magic spell, Rudiger hides himself behind a tree, cautious of the Chancellor's intentions. He suspects that she set a trap to discover his identity, as the Universal Stone turned out to be a fake. The teleportation magic drains all his power. Someone approaches Rudiger from behind the tree, and he tries to stop them with his wand. It's Flora Lumos. The professor warns her about the dangerous forest and asks her to leave. He offers to guide Flora and her friend to the exit gate, who came running towards the invisible energy and takes medicine. Rudiger comes out of the silent forest with other students. The Chancellor confronts him about the situation but detects no unusual reaction. She had already secured the original relic in a safe location. Rudiger intentionally left a trace on the fake stone to track its movements. However, when he attempts to use the fake stone to locate the remaining pieces of the relic, he finds it unsuccessful. Rudiger and his friend discuss the series of events surrounding the relic. They speculate that the original relic might be in Leatherbelk. Rudiger had previously cast a spell, which indicated the location as Kunst Auction House, the sole auction house in the area. Rudiger predicts that it could potentially be an item up for auction in an upcoming big event. As Rudiger tries to enter his office, one of his students interrupts him, appearing unsure about what to ask. To his surprise, she presents her coordinate assignment formula. Impressed, Rudiger acknowledges her brilliance and offers her a reward. He decides to give her the highest grades for her exceptional work. Intrigued by the student's lack of interest in grades, Rudiger invites her to his office and research lab. He shows her impressive formulas, and she passes out after witnessing new magic. When she wakes up, she asks about the magic and Rudiger explains it as the Klein bottle, designed for experimental purposes. Recognizing her unique abilities, he asks her to leave after their discussion. Later that night, Rudiger meets a man waiting for him on the street, who has a car ready. They head to the fourth floor of a hotel known for hosting underworld events, where fighting is strictly prohibited. Together, they make their entrance into the meeting room. The Black Rose woman identifies Rudiger as James Moriarty, who had disappeared after failing to start a war at Delica Kingdom. She inquires about his intention, whether he plans to resume where he left off. Violeta questions him about the destruction of the Red Society. He denies he's not there for all this. An old man questions Rudiger about his motives. Rudiger expresses his desire to build his power. The old man responds angrily, asking any intention of creating a second Red Society. Rudiger reveals his plan to begin his business venture and makes an offer to the meeting inviting them to work under him and earn profits. Everyone reacts with anger upon hearing Rudiger's offer. Violeta, one of the Black Rose women, accuses him of trying to control and manipulate them. Rudiger denies this, mentioning that if he wanted to control them, he would have already done so. He adds that if they decline his offer, he'll transfer them a portion of the Red Society's business ground. Rudiger explains his challenging position and emphasizes that he has nothing to gain from fighting. He simply seeks his own reliable power. Violeta becomes slightly angry, expressing her frustration at Rudiger's decision to make choices without consulting them about the business. Rudiger ensures that they won't fall into danger. Rudiger proposes to change the dark alley into a bright and lively place for people to live. He encourages them to read his plan and promises a fitting business idea for other organizations too. Everyone likes the idea of the business. After the meeting, Rudiger praised his friend for his idea. And as they step outside the hotel, Violeta approaches them, seeking a private conversation. She discusses the business with Rudiger and recognizes him as a mage. Rudiger notices a bruise on her face and heals it with his magic. Suddenly, they are ambushed by the remaining members of the Red Society. Rudiger and Violeta start fighting against the attackers. The fighting continues. Violeta feels she's out of shape. While fighting, Rudiger looks for the guy who shot the first arrow. The guy uses a diffusion scent, which is hard to get, and he can easily control his energy. Rudiger warns Violeta that there's a pro-assassin among them, and continuing to fight them is not fair. Assassins approach them. Violeta warns that they are from an assassin group beyond the southern desert, the Kalsapa assassins, who are paid to kill others. Rudiger cautions Violeta to be careful and not to bite her tongue during the encounter. Assassins attack Violeta with the destructive poison. Rudiger suggests escaping or waiting for the assassins to run out of daggers. They choose to flee, and Violeta thinks of Rudiger as cowardly. Rudiger surprises and kills one assassin with diffusion scent. Kalsapa attack from above, but Rudiger defeats them. Violeta's spell kills the remaining assassins. Rudiger and Violeta have a conversation about the recent events. Violeta is shocked to learn that Rudiger killed Belbot Rixon, who is involved in dirty work with Dutry and responsible for harming human dignity. She agrees to help Rudiger investigate who is behind the attack, and also continue with the business he suggested. In the room, Han and Sheridian, a dwarf girl, are engaged in a fight, with Sheridian bullying Han by calling him her assistant. Rudiger enters, curious about the noise, and Hain asks him to intervene and stop the fight. As Rudiger assigns Sheridian a task and she goes off to complete it, Han complains about her being mean to him. In response, Rudiger explains that it's due to his own weakness and reminds him that she is older, so he should be patient with her. Han asks Rudiger about the strange guys who are after him. Rudiger replies that they are from the Red Society, and he's already taken care of them. He then orders Han to investigate who is behind the attack. However, Han complains that he is busy checking all the items at the auction. Rudiger plans to rest and sees a group moving silently. He almost gets caught by the captain, Tarina Lionhowl. He's relieved he got rid of the evidence regarding Belbort Rixon's murder. Tarina reaches the assassin's ground and conducts her investigation. She discovers a sour, smelly dagger and identifies it as the work of a Kalsapor assassin. Examining the scene, they find that all the dead bodies were killed with magic, each with a single fatal strike. They speculate that Belbort's funds might have gone to the Red Society previously. Satisfied with their findings, they conclude the investigation, feeling they have obtained all the necessary information. Professor Selena informs that a knight from the National Security Bureau is looking for Professor Rudiger. Lloyd wants to discuss in detail about the werewolves that appeared on the campus. Rudiger tells everything about the incident, and the knight leaves the academy. Lloyd meets with the captain to discuss if there are any leads. During their handshake, Lloyd notices that, despite wearing gloves, the professor's hands feel like those of an average mage who hasn't used a knife before. Tarina feels that the situation is beyond her predictions, and the case falls back into mystery once again. With no lead to follow, they decide to halt the investigation. Tarina instructs Enya to remain in the area and report any suspicious activities. As Tarina meets with the professor, Chancellor Elisa greets her, but Tarina is angry as Elisa blocked her meeting with Rudiger. Tarina feels disheartened and departs from the scene. Unaware of the relationship between Tarina and the Chancellor, Rudiger watches from his window and silently thanks the Chancellor for helping him avoid direct meetings. He had already analyzed the situation before meeting Lloyd and had requested artificial skin to avoid direct contact while shaking hands. He was better prepared for everything, although the attempt was nice. A week later, Rudiger and his assistant, Sawanita, discuss recent events. Sawanita mentions that people have been avoiding contact, and private gatherings are taking place outside of Thirn. Additionally, a few days ago, 2 members of the Third Order were apprehended by the police, and some students from the professor's class were involved. They suspect that the students unwittingly got caught up in a criminal commission. Amidst these happenings, Professor Rudiger begins the first test period. He announces that he will teach the formula of the source code to the top 5 scoring students. The exam proves to be challenging, despite being an open book exam. After the exam, Renee meets with Professor Rudiger and asks to return the book he had lent her. However, Rudiger insists that she should keep it as a gift. Meanwhile, Chancellor Elisa hands Professor Chris the papers created by Rudiger, suggesting they could be helpful in formulating exam questions. Instead, Chris perceives it as an insult and takes thoughts of seeking revenge on Rudiger. Arendir Sunbei feels shaken by the exam and decides to take a break, walking in the garden for a nice lunch. There, she encounters a guy and politely asks him to step aside. However, the guy becomes rude, as Arendir had rejected him previously. She accuses him of being petty and ashamed to his noble status, which infuriates him. In a fit of anger, he grabs her wrist and forcefully drags her to the ground. Priodin Woolberg appears on the scene and confronts the guy, pointing out that he is ganging up and bullying a commoner. Furious, Priodin intervenes and stands up for Arendir, defending her from the bully. He defeats the bully, and Arendir expresses her gratitude. Priodin offers to share his lunch with her, and they go to a secret place to enjoy their meal together, finding it to be surprisingly tasty. Despite rumors that he hates commoners, it becomes evident that it's not the case. Professor Rudiger meets Selena on his way to grade the exam. Rudiger asks her if she's conducting practical exams this time. She takes him to watch the practical exam session, where they explore spiritualism. In this exam, people use their magic power to communicate with spirits. Selena demonstrates how to summon a spirit and encourages Rudiger to give it a try. However, he declines, explaining that spirits don't seem to have a liking for him. Feeling relieved that Selena didn't grow suspicious, Rudiger's attention is abruptly drawn to the presence of a first-order spirit in Thirn. Surprisingly, even Selena, a professor, couldn't sense it. Intrigued, Rudiger ventures into the forest, away from the ongoing classes. There, he discovers a mysterious letter that reads, "Tonight after classes." Rudiger reaches the meeting on time, and despite his true form, Flair, a fellow professor, is waiting for him. Rudiger asks what Flair wants from him. Flair explains that he plans to cause chaos at Ciaran, but every time he starts a fire, a mage steps in and suppresses it. Flair seeks Rudiger's assistance as he doesn't have a group like other First-Order professors. He proposes a deal. He will help Rudiger find John Doe and Esmeralda if Rudiger helps him. However, Rudiger declines the offer, knowing the president is still suspicious of him. As Rudiger is about to leave, Flair reveals intriguing information John Doe has a third-order assistant. Rudiger becomes angry and straightforwardly states that he picked an assistant from the organization, just like all the other professors. He warns Flair not to doubt his loyalty to the Zero Order again, emphasizing that such doubts could have serious consequences, possibly resulting in someone's death. After the conversation, Rudiger feels relieved that things didn't escalate further. He ponders over Rudiger's identity, suspecting that Rudiger might be a female spirit professor. He plans to narrow down the possibilities by observing the students during the upcoming welcome event for new professors, hoping to confirm his suspicions. Meanwhile, Sunbei unexpectedly ends up having lunch with Fruden again. She senses kindness from him, and she realizes that Arendir, Fruden, and Professor Ludger are the only ones who do not wish her harm. She meets Fruden's friend, Henry Presto, who shares information about a part-time job with great pay. The welcome event begins, and Rudiger Cherish arrives at the party. At the party, Rudiger observes everyone engrossed with their patrons and decides to search for Esmeralda. However, he gets entangled in a heated argument with Evan Loop. Evan pushes, demanding him to move aside, but Rudiger firmly declines, explaining that he already has plans. The professor becomes angry, forcefully grabs Evan's wrist, and pushes him away. Luke warns him that he will be fired from the academy. The Chancellor makes an appearance at the party, and Luke immediately complains to her about Rudiger's supposed violence, urging her to take action and fire him from the academy. Evan is shocked to see his father, the chairman of Luke, standing behind Chancellor Elisa during their conversation at the party. His father apologizes for Evan's act. Elisa announces a clean combat between them. Rudiger gets shocked hearing this, as he knows dueling there will leave no trouble afterwards. Evan puts his aide forward to fight with Rudiger. In a blink of a second, Rudiger defeats the aide. Rudiger feels relieved and refocuses on his original goal. Rudiger and Professor Selena decide to leave the party and meet the animism professors. Although they meet the professors, Rudiger's main goal of finding Esmeralda remains unfulfilled. During their visit, he notices Renee working as a part-time waitress, and he also meets Selena's assistant, Joanna Lovett, who is also working there. Feeling that he hasn't paid enough attention to the students, Rudiger realizes that he needs to focus more on them. As the waitress gracefully sets down the tray, Rudiger appears puzzled by Joanna's departure. They initiate a discussion about Violetta's venture into the clothing industry, where the team made bulk fabric purchases. The professor and the team express their frustration, as Violetta should have handled more commonplace transactions within the household. Nevertheless, the professor advises everyone to observe quietly while enjoying some wine, as their actions are bound to create a significant impact in due course. The professor's anger escalates, leading to an unintentional shattering of a wine glass. Meanwhile, the monster Esmeralda appears, causing panic among the group, prompting them to flee. The professor with others starts attacking the monster, but none of the attacks are working. The monster's black flame is different from regular fire. The professor realizes that something is off and the spirit doesn't have a proper bottom half. Considering the location where the spirit appeared, the medium that is suspicious is the silver tray which was placed in the middle of the table. The revelation reveals Joanna Lovett is Esmeralda. During the commotion, the waitress finds herself trapped, and the professor comes to save her. She feels a sense of familiarity with the professor, and asks if she has met the professor somewhere else, but the professor is trying to convince that she's mistaken and suggests she leave as it's dangerous there. The professor and the spirit start fighting. As the battle rages on, a surge of excitement fills the air when the team manages to break the monster's hand. The Chancellor remarks that the damage didn't do as much as anticipated. The monster's arm quickly regenerates, revealing their inability to defeat it at their current power level. Unexpectedly, Rudiger Chelsea joins the fray, leaving everyone stunned by his presence. The green-haired member of the group notices an unusual behavior among the spirits, sensing that they are somehow protecting something. Suspecting that the summoned creature might have a connection to a medium. In a swift and powerful attack, Rudiger swiftly ends the battle. Rudiger and the green-haired member engage in a discussion about the magic employed in the final moments of the battle. Rudiger describes grounding magic power at a specific coordinate to manifest it. She reveals that hearing strange sounds while using magic, especially when not in optimal condition, is merely a sign of her own alarmism, and sometimes such abilities can be far more advanced. The Green explains that it can be done easily when you get used to it, but Rudiger opposes it as everyone cannot manage that unless gifted. According to Greenhair, the hearing of sound when magic is used while not in good condition is just her alarmism, whereas sometimes they are far more developed. Curious, she inquires if Rudiger hears any unusual sounds, explaining that while such talents may initially seem like a blessing, they often prove otherwise. However, Rudiger denies experiencing any such sounds. Intrigued, he contemplates the possibility of more profound experiences, perhaps even making direct contact with the gods themselves. Meanwhile, there is a terrorist attack in the banquet hall. They were not ready to slip Esmeralda's identity as she had made a move. People enjoy the newly renovated street, finding it much cleaner and more pleasant than before. Other organizations have also joined in the cooperative business idea, with some working on a musical and others preparing a magazine. They have asked students to spread rumors for advertisement, and many people are willing to invest in the project. Rudiger accompanies Violetta to meet Alex, a skillful member of the UN with whom they are going to work. However, Alex's unusual behavior leaves Violetta unsure about whether to trust him or not. Alex introduces himself as a noble from the southern Fatima kingdom, but Rudiger bluntly calls him a crook. They take Alex to their hideout and explain his mission. Han appears tired from his own mission, where he was bullied by Bella Luna, another member of the UN who is in charge of medicine and gunpowder production. Two other members, Owen Phantos and Owen Arfa, join them. Arfa stuns everyone when he mentions Rudiger as his father, clarifying later that he considers the leader as his father figure because Rudiger taught him a lot. Rudiger shares their goal, planning to raid the upcoming Kunt auction site. Despite past failed attempts and improved security, they are determined to succeed. Rudiger asks Han to bring the plan and presents the blueprint of the site to the team. Rudiger finds Professor Selena and her assistant, Joanna, engaged in a conversation with someone. Selena notices Rudiger and brings up the banquet incident. The person they were talking to was also inquiring about the same incident. Selena suspects Joanna to be Esmeralda, but Joanna expresses regret for not being able to help back then. Rudiger commends her efforts in evacuating people during the incident. He also praises Selena for her smile and kindness, making her feel shy but grateful for his understanding. Rudiger takes the opportunity to teach his assistant how to handle such situations naturally. He asks her to investigate Joanna Lovett for it. The scene shifts to the Kunst auction site, where Ivan Luke seeks to grow his business and regain his father's trust. As they all arrive, Luke warmly welcomes them. Inside the site, Luke's guest asks him for a favor and hands him precious magic fluids used in producing high-quality magic stones. Luke agrees to store them in the basement. The group, connected through mobile comms devices provided by Sheridian, prepares for their plan. Phantos takes on the role of Luke's silent bodyguard, while Alex meticulously observes and reports details through the mobile comm. As they are about to execute the plan, Alex warns them about a problem. His ex-girlfriend, Enya Joiners, is present at the site. Rudiger advises Alex to escape when he gets the chance. Alex follows the advice and leaves the site to meet the others at the hideout, explaining the entire situation. Alex explains that the house's approximate structure matches the map, but the storage rooms for auction items are divided into 3 separate rooms. The most valuable items are placed in the rooms with the highest numbers. After the investigation, everyone suggests aiming for the 3rd day of the auction, but Rudiger decides to act on the 2nd day. He assigns Sheridian to build something and asks Violetta to find a construction specialist to aid them in their plan. They meticulously plan the raid. Detective Assistant Betty arrives in Leatherbelk with heavy luggage containing all his important documents. Suddenly, it starts raining, putting the documents at risk of getting wet. Fortunately, Sazy, a skilled private detective, casts a magic spell to shield them and keep the documents safe. Grateful for Casey's help, they begin to discuss the reason for their presence in Leatherbelk. They talk about the movements of suspicious organizations and potential ambushes. Betty presents evidence from newspapers and data he's carrying, suggesting that all these personas might be the same person. At the Kunst auction house, Evan welcomes Princess Arendir and leads her to the VVIP room. She wonders about the cost of everything in the room. Their first objective is to find the key to the elevator entrance, so Alex and Violetta take on the task. Violetta pretends to be drunk and asks the keymaster to escort her to the room. Violetta expresses gratitude to the man for his assistance, but he insists on staying in his room. Playfully, she suggests that he needs to sober up before finding his room. In response, the man proposes they play a fun game together to help them both get sober. Violetta effortlessly knocks him down. They search for the key. The auction starts with a jewel cried by a mermaid. A man, Casey Selmoy, a detective, deduces Princess Arendir's identity from the lingering scent of air freshener on her, even though she hadn't used any perfume. He introduces himself as Celadon Greenwater. In another part of the event, Evan, Luke, and Rudiger engage in a formal conversation while clashing with each other. Luke senses that the professor is intentionally keeping an eye on him, raising his suspicions. Kafka wants the device to work anywhere and asks the boy not to use his name. The boy suggests the name Damas. They knock down a knight in panic, and the boy hides the body. Another knight arrives, and the boy mimics the voice of the previous one, fooling the newcomer. Alex reunites with Violetta at the auction house to obtain the key. He catches her when she slips, and their eyes meet during the encounter. Melvin and Hugo successfully obtain the key. Steam emerges in the market, causing everyone to cough. It becomes apparent that it's a terrorist attack involving Bellaluna's specialty tear gas. The guards swiftly respond, instructing people to calmly take shelter. Two guards decide to stay and defend the lift. Alex carefully observes the situation as the plan begins. Phantos faces resistance from the guards at the lift. Alex pretends to be with Evan Luke and distracts them. Phantos strikes the guards, damaging his armor. Hugo and Melvin handle the guards at the entrance. Kafka and Duma enter the auction. Rudiger notices Detective Seizi Selmoy amidst the chaos. Recalling his previous meeting with Seizi when he was disguised, Rudiger murmurs that she is incredibly skilled. In the security room, the camera feed becomes interesting as someone enters the second room by digging through the wall. Security personnel are alerted and inspect the area to investigate the intrusion. The assault team cleverly deceives the guards and successfully loots all the contents of Storage Room 2, while everyone's attention is focused on Room 3. The mission is a resounding success. Han feels uncomfortable in his armor, while Alex and Phantos take their time, not encountering guards immediately. Phantos uses his spirits to locate the guards and senses that there are 8 guards scattered around. They easily took down 2 guards who were near the storage room. Meanwhile, the real guards plan a transfer and divide tasks accordingly. They enter the lift with the items, unaware of the impending assault. The assault team initiates their plan and attacks the guards inside the lift. Sheridian manipulates the lift to prevent the guards below from reaching them. They load everything into the vehicle. Han informs the boss that the others have successfully managed to escape, and he will personally take the item and deliver it to Rudiger. Rudiger looks at the guards and decides to leave to meet with Hans. In the auction hall, no one is present, and suddenly, an explosion rocks the hall, causing panic among the attendees. The robbers storm in, warning everyone not to move. Rudiger realizes that it's all because of their actions. He notices another man running towards him, and his senses detect a bomb vest on the man. In the chaos of the explosion, Rudiger fights against the Liberation Army. The bomb goes off a curse of black magic. Princess Arendir escapes, and Casey's water bubbles shield them from the attackers' bullets. They decide to make their escape. Hans confronts the professor, questioning why he accepted someone he considers a coward. Leaving all the fighting responsibilities to the professor despite possessing great power, the professor calmly responds, acknowledging him. Hans opens up about his difficult past, having been an orphan who struggled to connect with others, except for a bright girl who became like a sister to him. He delves into a painful childhood memory, recounting his first transformation. The professor tries to console Hans, explaining that there will come a time when he has to face a reality he may not want to confront. He advises Hans that if he chooses to stand and fight instead of running away, he provides him with a knife to be used as a last resort. Amidst their conversation, Hans is attacked, and the mana of a relic in his possession is stolen. Despite this setback, he shows determination and manages to get the attacker to leave the pouch behind, although he takes it with him. Realizing that others might not have been as generous, Hans stands up, retrieves the sword the boss had given him, and undergoes a transformation to retaliate against the thief. Meanwhile, other team members notice a commotion within the auction house. Earlier, they had a discussion about the mysterious first-ranked phantom, not knowing who it is. The professor reveals that the first-ranked phantom is, in fact, Hans. As chaos ensues due to Hans's transformation, the guests are evacuated, and concern arises for the safety of the princess, whose whereabouts are unknown. The shocking sight of what Hans has become leaves everyone in the auction house astounded. The Beast of Givaudan, a monster that wreaked havoc in Durumong 5 years ago, reappears on the streets, causing panic among the citizens. The cries for help fill the city as everyone seeks safety. The Clockwork Order quickly arrives to defend the place and instructs everyone to evacuate. The Clockwork Order confronts the monster, but it attacks from all sides, making it challenging to take it down. The captain orders them to hold their ground and wait for the right opportunity. The situation feels dire, and they fear the city might collapse under the monster's rampage. Casey takes the lead, guiding everyone to safety with her water bubbles, helping them jump to higher ground. She suspects James Moriarty's involvement in planning this chaos. She uses her spells to attack the monster. However, the monster collapses, Seizi's magic with its own power, interfering with her mana. Undeterred, she creates a night order made of water and launches a coordinated attack. Rudiger watches the scene from a nearby rooftop and senses an ominous mana presence. Everyone hears a loud vibration. Suddenly, a horde of rats appears, joining the attack scene. A swarm of rats appears, and Casey, who is scared of rats, becomes overwhelmed. The rats start climbing the walls, adding to the chaos. Betty arrives to help Sazy, and they try to fight off the rats, but the situation becomes more complicated as the rats combine with the severed head, forming a cryptid. This monstrous creature was responsible for the sudden appearance of cryptids during the Night of Blood. The Clockwork Order urges them to stop before more cryptids emerge. The rats are multiplying rapidly, making it difficult for anyone to focus on the main threat. The rats attack from all directions, causing mayhem. The team plans on evacuating, but suddenly, all creatures, including the rats, stop moving. It's James Moriarty, and Casey recognizes him from the mask covering his face. James understands the madness of the monster but believes that Hans is still alive inside it and feels the need to protect him. He attacks the monster with a special sword filled with magic to prevent the severed head from propagating as new cryptids. The cryptids disappear, and everyone begins to trust James due to his skills. However, gas surrounds the battle arena as the monster abandons using tear gas. James continues to peel the monster, but it propagates once again, leading to more chaos. James Moriarty and Hans engage in a tense face-off. Recognizing the advantage of having no one left to protect James, Hans attempts to end the fight, but James compels him to leave the body of the monster and shoots him. Hans transforms back to his original form, and the monster's cries subside. While the knights want to inspect the situation, the presence of civilians still requiring evacuation takes precedence, prompting them to move away from the monster's body. Despite having a giant harpoon lodged in his neck, Hans's regenerative abilities from his transformations ensure he remains unharmed. They secure Hans and plan to leave before the knights arrive. However, their escape is halted by Casey Selmoy, who confronts James Moriarty, revealing that he knew James had not died previously. Casey has figured out James's habit of changing identities, vowing to pursue him relentlessly. James realizes that he had underestimated CZ significantly. Casey accuses James of being part of the Black Dawn, igniting fury in James as expected of an old adversary. Despite their rivalry, James points out the presence of terrorists and civilians still trapped inside the auction house. Casey finds the notion threatening, but James warns him that even if he apprehends the culprits, the lives of those inside are not guaranteed. Casey's perspective of James shifts from annoying to skilled. As they prepare to leave, Casey intervenes, using his power. Although he alone wouldn't be able to defeat them, Betty joins him, creating a formidable challenge for James and the group. James Moriarty expertly blocks the Sting Sword attack with precision. Sensing the approach of the Clockwork Knight, he decides to leave the fight. Unfazed, James smiles confidently, accepting the challenge presented to him. With a brief farewell, James bids adieu to the scene, leaving an atmosphere of tension and anticipation as the conflict between him and Sazy Selmoy looms on the horizon.